Okay, so it's good to be back here 1 year after my previous talk. Actually, that is also a little bit annoying for me because I have a popular talk that I do now in lots of cities. I just did it 2 days ago in Stockholm, in Kolmården in Sweden, not far from Stockholm, called Agility Scales. But I've already done that one. I did it last year. That was the first time that I did that talk. So I could not do that again, of course. That would be annoying. So Bogdan said, well, just do something experimental. Run an experiment. Oh my God, now I have to come up with an idea. So I thought about it for a while, and I delayed until the last responsible moment, agile as I am. So I think a week ago I came up with an idea. And that means that I have good and bad news for you. The good news is you're the first ones who are going to see this new talk as it is developing. Hopefully you will like that. The bad news is that this is going to be the ugliest presentation you've ever seen. Because I have spent 0 minutes on designing it. It's not important, right? It's not important. Who cares about the colors? It's first about the message. So let's see if the message works before I go to pimp it. And I thought, well, let's just start talking about my startup that I'm working with. Oh, nice balloons there. Agility Scales is the company that I have started a year ago, and I have some experiences in how to try and be more agile with that startup. And I have found is that clicker working? Yeah, I found this interesting diagram that shows the life cycle of a startup, the phases of a startup from startupcommons.com. And my team and I already did the first couple of phases, the ideating, what is the idea about, the concepting, problem, solution, fit, and the committing, which is finding the team and paying them and finding investment, etc. We are now in the validating. That is the most difficult phase, according to many experts. Is what you're trying to make actually making sense? Is somebody willing to pay for it? And there's also called product market fit. That is the magic term for that phase. The validation. Is your product something that people are willing to pay for? This is where most startups die in this phase. So it's pretty scary. We're in the middle of it. And the next phase should be scaling up if the product succeeds, and then establishing yourself as a big company. But I thought something is missing here because there are a couple of things, a couple of discussions that we had, my team and I, where we thought, no, this is not the right time to do that. For example, when we sign up new users for our product, that requires quite a bit of manual work on the back end. We don't care, because we're validating that the product makes sense to customers, and customers don't care that things cost us time on the back end, right? So we're not going to spend any time on making things more efficient, because that is not what this phase is about. We will postpone that, those kinds of activities. We have to focus on product market fit. But at the same time, the scaling up phase, that is multiplying once your product works, making it the market as large as possible. But then you want the back end to work. You don't want to do everything manually then, right? So I think actually there's a phase missing, which is sort of the stabilization phase, which is after you found product market fit. You know, okay, we've proven customers like this. Now, before we're going to scale it up, we'll have to fix a few things on the back end and other stuff that is manual. So I think there's a phase missing. And then what I also find with this diagram is it ignores what happens afterwards, after you are not a startup anymore. But I found another diagram, which is this, which is focusing on the scale-ups, basically, the larger organizations. And this diagram says, well, Startups usually have seed and startup phase, and then growth, establishment, expansion, maturing, and exiting. So they focus on larger organizations. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because this diagram summarizes big companies over here and focuses on startups, and this diagram summarizes startups and focuses on the large companies. I can combine that, and then I have this. Basically, the startup phases are these 5: ideating, concepting, committing, validating, stabilizing, and this is a new one that I invented. And then the scale up is for the large organization, the scaling, establishing, expanding, maturing, and exiting. So that's nice. I like the number 10. It makes it even for startups and scale ups. So I like this model. And then, of course, there's also something very important. Besides startup and scale up, there's also something that you can call screw up, right? Whereas then everything fails and you die, basically. It can happen at any time in any of those 10 phases. So this is something that I was playing with 2 weeks ago, and oh, this is a nice structure for a blog post or maybe for a new talk. So that is my experimentation. So, okay, well, let's use this as the pattern across this talk. And then I thought last week, well, that some of these parts look a bit similar to the human life cycle. Can we sort of map that onto each other? Let's try. This is the human life cycle that I found. I found that you have startups, kids, basically, before they're born, and it was phase 1, and then infancy, and then 3 parts of childhood, early, middle, late, and then once they become 14 years, and they're scaling up, basically, and then they're adolescent, and then 3 phases of adulthood, and then basically preparing to die at the end. There's also 10 phases. It's like almost similar. It is metaphorical. It is not exactly the same thing, of course, but I like that. You can sort of see them you can sort of overlay them onto each other. And then, of course, for human life also it applies that there is another one called screw up. It can happen any moment. Hopefully we postpone that for as long as possible. So that is, I thought, an interesting way of experimenting with my talk. I will just go through these 10 phases. That helps me to structure the ideas that I have. And let's start with the first one. Ideating. That's pre-birth in human terms. So when you're preparing to start with a company, what should that company be about? Well, there are a lot of blog posts, a lot of people with opinions about what companies should be about. I have heard people say, and I've seen them write, that it is all about following your passion. There's something that you're passionate about, for example, knitting, or bicycles, or running, or whatever, and then you can somehow turn that into a business. Is what some say. And others say, no, that doesn't work. You have to start with what generates money. What is it that people are willing to pay for? And then by doing that better and better, you will find that you can become passionate about it. Even if it's the silliest thing in the world, if you do it better than everyone else, that can become your passion. And another say, no, that's not how it works. You have to start with what the world needs. Look at society as a whole. What are the problems? Like clean up the ocean or something like that. Or we want to fly to Mars. That is what humanity wants. We've done the moon, done. Now we want to go to Mars. So there's another way of looking at it. And then other people say, well, no, you should just look at what you're good at. What is your talent? And there you should start your new company. Well, I found this diagram. It's called Ikigai. That is from Japanese. It's Japanese way of looking at purpose. And it says it is all of that, actually. It is a bit of everything in a very complex, dynamic way. I like this model. I like that visualization. So purpose is somewhere in the middle here, between doing what you love, doing what you're paid for, what the world needs as a solution, and where your talent is. And that is an interesting insight. So you could start from anywhere, but you have to move somehow here tweaking your idea and your startup until it is the intersection of all those four. So that's a useful practice, I think, a useful model to reflect on. So that's the first part. First phase, what is your startup about? Now the second phase is infancy in human terms. The startup is born and we're now concepting what it is all going to be about. And one very useful practice that I have applied with my team is personas. This is not unfamiliar to some people in the Agile world. I hope you come up with names of typical users, typical customers of your solution. So, for example, we have the one that we focus on now is Alberto, the external Agile coach. The name dropped, the last word dropped off here. Alberto, the external Agile coach. We consistently refer to Alberto in our conversations on our team. All of us know who Alberto is. We made Alberto up. He doesn't exist, but he is the template for the Agile coach who is external to an organization and was then hired by companies to help companies be more agile. We have plenty of other personas, but you cannot solve everyone's problems at the same time. Most people say start with one persona. At most have 3, but that's probably already too much. Just find that one persona, and that is what you should be building your solution for. And then we use the lean canvas template. Not unfamiliar, I'm very sure, to a large number of people in the audience. The lean canvas template from Ash Maurya is adapted from the business model canvas, which is an even more popular model, but lean canvas specifically focuses on the startup phase. And you can see here that it starts with the first thing that you have to fill in is the problem. Well, I just discussed that. That's the inception phase of your startup. And then number 2, customer segments. That's the personas, basically. Which people are you identifying? And then it has a couple of other items to fill in. What is your unique value proposition? The solution that you're building and the unfair advantage. I love that term. Everything at the top basically is what we can focus on now. The other stuff that comes later, key metrics and revenue streams, that you will fill that in later. We found that a very useful model. It's a good reflection tool as well. Now we have a startup, and we have to find some money to invest in our company. Well, that is an interesting topic. I have some experience in that area. I had a startup at the end of the 90s. Maybe some of you remember it. Others perhaps here have not even been born in that year, could be. But I had a startup at the end of the 90s, and it was an interesting time in my life. I was named Entrepreneur of the Year in the Netherlands. I was very proud of that. And I found investors, a couple of them, who invested 1 million euros in that startup. And for 2 years, we were very, very successful at spending all that money to the last euro. We didn't find any customers, though, because the plan didn't work. The idea didn't work. But I have experience now. I have experience in begging for money and convincing people to invest in my company. That is something that I'm very talented at. And the traditional approach is that you ask investors for some euros, and you issue shares as a company. Give them equity, as it is called, a part ownership into your company. Now the problem is this is extremely annoying process. It takes long to convince those people to find them in the first place because they're very, very busy, and the negotiations take long, and then you have to go to the notary and issuing shares that cost like 1,000 euros or something just for the documentation. Extremely annoying. So you don't want to do that too often. But that means that you're not agile. It means that you want to get as much money as possible to survive for as long as possible before you need more money. That is not agile. Agile would be if you were able to get money anytime you want. So this is not an agile approach. this is an agile approach that I came up with. Well, I'm not the only one who came up with it, of course, but I'm the one actually trying to extend it even further. What I've done with my company is, together with the notary, we have set up a foundation that owns all the shares up to now. All the shares were bought by the foundation, and the foundation issues certificates. Now this is very easy. There's just one PDF that I have to sign with someone who wants to invest in my company, and I don't need the notary at all. That makes me very, very agile. At any moment when someone says, yeah, I would like to invest in your company, I say, all right, great, because I have this foundation that owns all the shares, and you simply get a certificate that represents that share. And that means I don't have to go to the notary. So I'm telling you this because it is important to be agile as an organization, also in the way you attract funding. We also participate, we also collaborate with Seeders, which is a UK crowdfunding platform, and they basically do the same thing. They have a big crowd behind them, and everyone can invest in our company, but basically Seeders is the official shareholder, and they are the nominee on behalf of the crowd. But the crowd is actually investing through Seeders in our company. And then we have one big investor, and they are separate, and for them, indeed, we issue new shares. So this solves a couple of problems. First of all, we can get money much more easily because, as I said, the foundation can simply offer a certificate to anyone who says, here are a couple of euros. And another thing that it solves is I am not very dependent on them because these processes take quite a long time. Like I've been waiting for Seeders for 7 weeks already to finish their documentation. Doesn't matter. We have money coming in from here. But I'm keeping my options open. So that was the phase where we prepare to start with our startup, and now we go to committing. I need people to work with. I need employees, team members. Well, one thing that I was inspired by was the company Menlo in the US. There's a book about them, Joy Inc. Maybe some of you have read it. I see someone nodding her head over there. A couple of fascinating practices. One thing in particular that I was inspired by was their recruitment process. Basically what they described was anyone can apply at Menlo, and there's lots of people who want to work there because it's a very, very successful, happy workplace, and it is in stages, and every stage is successively more difficult and more intensive and takes more time, both for the person who applies and for the company. Like the 5th stage, for example, is they get people together and they work at that company for half a day in groups. Right? The people who apply, they work together, and then they have employees monitoring and coaching them and just looking at what people are doing and making notes. And then the 6th stage is they have to come back and then they work there for a week. And then the 7th stage that they work there for a month. So they build it up over time, and I thought that's almost like a game. It's a bit like a game where you get to the next level, and every level is more difficult than the previous ones. And more people drop out because they do not have the stamina to go on. They do not want to invest in it. So for me, that was an inspiration. I thought, I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to make it a hiring game. So I set up a type form. I emailed everyone that I knew over my newsletter and my blog. I said, I'm hiring, and this is the first level. The first level is just type your name and your email address. That's it. Most people are able to do that. Not everyone. That's the first test. Can you type an email address that is correct and that doesn't bounce? Well, I swear some people already drop off at that point. Because there are people who aren't even able to type their own email address. So that's the first very easy entry point. And then with their email address, we send them an automated message, and they say, okay, now you achieve the second level. Yay! The second level is we want this information from you. Do you have a Twitter account? Do you have a LinkedIn account? Do you have a portfolio or something like that? And one very simple but fun personal test. That is very funny, very unimportant, but I just want to see that people go through the effort of doing that 10-minute personal test, which just says something interesting about you. So 1/3 of people drop off because they're not interested in doing that, doing the work, and then I'm okay, fine. Then I don't want to work with you if you don't want to invest in that. And then 2/3 remain, and then they go to the third level, and then we build it up again and again. Because the third level, we ask more personality tests. We ask a video. We ask you to record a video, answer 3 questions on video. Which person in the world inspires you the most? What was your biggest failure that you learned from? And then something else. It doesn't matter how you answer the questions. It just gives us an idea. Are you serious about this job that you are applying for? And funny thing is, there is a small issue with Typeform. They only allow uploads of up to 10 megabytes. Well, it turns out that some people are unable to work with that. They cannot figure out how to upload a video under 10 megabytes. So they started emailing me personally, say, hey, Jurgen, I was unable to upload a video, but here is it as an attachment to my emails. And no, that doesn't count. We test your creativity here. We test your technical competence. Figure it out. How to turn your video into something that is less than 10 megabytes. It shouldn't be that easy. Use Google. Have you heard of it? You should be. That's a test. So then more people drop off. So it gets progressively more difficult. The last phase was that I met with every person for half a day and worked with them, so that I really understood what kind of person is this. That was the last level of the hiring game. The interesting thing is, we got messages from people that ultimately we rejected, who said, this was so much fun. I enjoy this process. I'm pity that I was not selected, but I would do it again anytime. And they recommended their friends to try to beat the game, basically. So that's something that I learned. Turn the recruitment process into a hiring game, because this is already the first part of how you present yourself to the outside world. And many recruitment processes are terrible out there in the world. But that is image that you're building up. It is reputation that you should take care of. And then payment. How much should I pay them? Oh, interesting question. I have absolutely no idea. I have people in Poland, in Ukraine, in Portugal, in Germany, in the US, in Britain, 12 people now all over the planet. I have absolutely no idea how much I should pay them. They probably know better than I do what they should earn. So I thought, okay, I don't want to do all that work of research. I'm just going to lead by example. So I said, okay, this is what I want to earn as a CEO. This is what I have earned in the past. I can show you evidence. This is what I want, I need as a person to live in my part of the world, and different parts of the world, the living standards are different. And this is what I would consider reasonable, considering other people who have a similar job. So I offer some evidence, data points, right? This is what other people in my role, in my part of the world, usually earn. And then, given that information, I make a proposal. I say, well, I think it is reasonable to earn this amount, given this evidence that I have provided. And then I said, okay, now I have done this, now you do that as well. I asked each of my team members, and you can see all the names, they're all here. Each of them have a compensation proposal. And they were all similar to this one. This was what I earned in my previous job, the bonuses that I got. These are the salaries usually in my part of the world, taking into account that, blah, 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 some calculations. And then they came up with a number. And you guess what? Overall, it was lower than I had expected. Because people are fair. By default, they're honest. If they see that I am being honest, I'm not trying to screw anyone. I just tell them, look, I don't know. You tell me what is reasonable in your part of the world. And we do 360 review, because so all the team members look at all the proposals and they give feedback on each other. And if they think something is fishy here, then they will go into Google and find some other data points. And well, I found this data point that says that maybe it is different. All in a very respectful way. I'm quite happy with this process as the CEO so far. So now I have a team of 12 people, including me, so 11 plus 1. And we just had an interesting discussion in the previous session about how to adapt Scrum with distributed teams. Well, my team is fully distributed. And one thing that doesn't work out of the box is stand-up meetings. Because we're in 11 different countries with different time zones and everything. And it is important to realize that as I believe, Marcus, was that your name? What? Yeah? Michael, okay, sorry, Michael said in the previous session, it is important to understand what is the intention of a certain practice. What is the intention of Scrum of suggesting that people do stand-up meetings? Well, a couple of things. It is good to see each other every now and then. It is also good to keep each other informed in a very high bandwidth way that costs as little time as possible. So don't write each other documents, but just tell each other once per day, this is what I've been working on. It's also good to tell each other what you want to do during the day so that you can adapt your plans. If you know that he is doing that, okay, then maybe I should be doing this. So you can coordinate and help each other out. If someone raises a problem, I'm stuck, then you help each other out. That is what the stand-up is for, basically, and keep it as efficient as possible. So I thought, okay, that is the intention of the stand-ups. Now I need a distributed version of it. So what we do, actually, we broke it in 2 pieces. One is called Work Out Loud. We have a channel on Slack where we basically keep each other informed of what we did and what we're planning to do. But because we're all in different time zones, those messages come in at different moments. Because Kirill in Dnipro writes it at 9 o'clock for him in the morning, but Paula in Los Angeles types it at 9 or 10 in the morning for her, which is 8 hours or 9 hours later, right? So we do that at the start of the day when it makes sense for us, but we do keep each other updated very efficiently. This is what I've done, this is what I'm planning to do. But then we miss the face-to-face. We miss the conversations. We miss the helping each other out. That is what the Daily Cafe is for. So we have introduced the Daily Cafe. It takes place every day at 6 o'clock European time. So for Kirill, it's a bit later. For Paula, it is in the morning, and Jada also works in the Bay Area. But that's no problem, because this is focused on, okay, what do we need the others for? And it's basically lean coffee style. It always takes no more than 30 minutes, sometimes less than 20 minutes. We type the topics that we want to discuss briefly, and that we want other people's input on, like, hey, where do we want to organize the next face-to-face? It is maybe useful to discuss that over Zoom instead of rather than on Slack. And by the way, we have a start ritual and an end ritual. The start ritual is, for the first 5 minutes, we are not allowed to talk about work. It's the mandatory chit-chat. The idea is that if you don't see each other in an office, then it is too easy to just talk about work, and then you never really get to know each other personally. So the first 5 minutes, we have to talk about, how is your son? Is he still sick? What movie did you see this weekend? Or anything that comes up. And it is important to have these non-work questions. Sometimes we have no idea what to ask. So there can be an uncomfortable silence for 30 seconds. When are the 5 minutes over? And then other times the chit-chat runs into 10 minutes, and it's like, oh, okay, hey guys, maybe we should start with the real stuff. It depends a little bit. But at least we force ourselves to be personal. And then at the end, we do a fist of 5, or a return on investment, as some people call it. How effective was the meeting? And as you can see here, this was a screenshot from this week. Some people thought it was very effective, 5 fingers. Some thought, well, I didn't get much value out of it, 3 fingers. It differs. We always copy them onto Slack, so we have a whole history of fists of 5 over the last year. And by the way, all our meetings are recorded by default, everything we do. So everything is on Google Drive. In case you missed the meeting, you can review it later on if you want. So that's the committed team. Now validation. This is an interesting part. You probably are familiar with the lean startup movement. It has this famous cycle of build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. That is trying things all the time, adding new features and changing things, etc., etc. It's as if you're redecorating your house, new carpet, new vase of flowers or whatever. You make your house more and more livable, more and more enjoyable for yourself. That's a bit like this. But then there's the other option is pivot. You give up, okay, it's not working, we're going in a completely different direction. We have to admit that the product is a failure and we're going to try something else. So a famous pivot, for example, is Slack. They started as a games company, didn't work. And then they pivoted and now they're a communications platform and that worked. That is a typical example of pivot. You try something completely different. It is like moving out of your house. So, all right, I forget about it. This house is not working. I stop investing in it, and we're moving somewhere else. But I think there's an option in the middle, and I call it patch, which is too big to call it a decoration, but too small to call it a complete abandonment of what you've done before. For example, adding a garage or digging a cellar under your house. That is quite a big project, but you don't give up on your house. You just realized something was missing from my house. Right? But it's more than just buying new curtains. Right? So I call it pivot, patch, or persevere. And we had a typical patch moment just a couple of months ago with our startup. And I can describe it with this tool that I have developed. I call it a value compass. At some point, I simply try to draw what is valuable for Alberto. Right? Alberto is our persona. Everything is for Alberto. So this is dependent on the persona, this value compass. And I thought, okay, what do external Agile coaches want? Well, all of them tell me they want to find ideas from across the world. Give me ideas of how to help organizations be more Agile. And they also want to experiment and do those ideas, to take steps. They also want to evaluate. Is it helping? Is it working for us? They want tools to measure, for example, the effectiveness of those practices. But they also very much want to share their learnings with others around the world. And this is what I realize is the very typical plan, do, check, act cycle. It's been around for decades. It is the famous Deming-Schuhart cycle. I didn't invent it, it already existed. I felt very stupid coming up with a diagram that turned out to be 60 years old. But in a way, it was also validation that, oh, actually, this makes sense, apparently. I'm not the first one who came up with this. And then I create an outer ring that is not that important because each of those I can subdivide it in two different things. Like, for example, new ideas, well, I can browse for them on a website or in the app, but I could also get alerts about them from an AI, with notifications or newsletter, for example. That's two ways of getting new ideas. The others are also subdivided. So I call this a compass because this helps our team to focus on Alberto. And what we've decided is for the next 2 months, we focus on this area and this area and this area. Because we cannot do everything at the same time. Similar to OKRs, we have objectives and the idea is to optimize those parts. And I said, what I realized was there was an important part missing, and that was this part of the diagram. For nearly a year, we had been focusing on all of this. But this part, the tracking of value, the checking, the validating if something works, was missing from our product. So it helped me to draw that value compass, and then it stared back at me in my face that this is something that you are forgetting about. Next part is how to measure this. I have discussed that just previously in the previous session. Measurement, performance measurement. I did some digging around how do startups measure their product market fit. And there are lots of blog posts about that, but all the suggestions basically come to these 4. You have to measure conversion, how many people turn into from non-customers into customers. You have to measure how intensively do they use your product. Then you have to measure how many of them are leaving, that is retention, or the opposite is churn, often mentioned. And then how many of them are promoting your product to others, to their friends, with sharing, net promoter score, whatever, various ways of measuring that. All of the suggestions I read fell in these 4 categories. So that's what we started doing since 2 weeks ago. We basically create a dashboard. We have cohorts, that is people who arrived in a certain week. And by measuring per cohort, we can see, are we getting better at conversion? Are we getting better at interaction, getting better at attention, and we're getting better at promotion? And I told the teams, each of those teams, I want you to improve those numbers. These are basically our OKRs. These are the key results that we want to have improved over the next couple of months. All right, fast forward to the last couple of stages, because this is where we are. For the next ones, I can only paint a picture of ideas that we will be confronted with. We will have to reorganize somehow, because already 12 people, that is not a team anymore, right? That's a group. It's not a team. I like the concept of holacracy, where people choose themselves and which circles they are part of. Well, we do something similar, only we call them crews. We call them not circles, because I don't like the word circle. It makes me think of holacracy, and I don't like that. But I like the idea of people choosing for themselves what sub-team are they organizing themselves in, and what are they focusing on. So basically, we now have a crew for this area, we have a crew for that area, and we have a crew for that area. And the people themselves decide which crews they want to be part of. So that's happening right now. In the next phase, when we're going to stabilize, I want to focus on the board of directors, which is an important thing to have for companies. This is the traditional board of directors, where you have a company with board members, and basically they all represent investors. And that is a typical capitalist version of the board of directors. All of them represent investors, and investors have one thing on their mind, which is profit. Right? That's why they invest. So that means that the whole company becomes profit-oriented. I prefer more a stakeholder kind of view. So I want a board of stakeholders, where I have one board member who represents the large investors, one board member who represents the small ones, as the crowd, lots of people, hundreds of people there. I want one board member who represents the employees, and I want a board member who represents the customers. And I can even imagine one who represents partners, for example, business partners or anyone else. The law prescribes that investors decide who are board members. That's a pity. But it's no problem as long as I have more than 50% of the ownership of the company, then I decide, basically. So it's just my decision as a large investor that I want a board member here is going to represent the employees, not me. I can do that because I have more than 50%. So that's going to be an experiment in the stabilization phase. And then we're going to scale up, and then we're going to need metrics. Like these are the metrics that I have that I had for my book, Managing for Happiness book. Ooh, lots of checklists that I that I had. I'm going to need a new checklist very soon for my company. But all of that is about flexible processes. We are in the exploration phase. We don't need detailed processes now. That is for when we're going to scale up. So a concern for later. The establishing phase, that is when we are early adults. Then we need things such as one-on-ones, for example. That is typical for larger organizations, for managers to have one-on-ones with their teams. While we are actually already experimenting with something different, which is peer-to-peer one-on-ones. I have a screenshot that I just took from this week. Here it's a bit hard to read, but you can see that on Tuesday, Harold and Jada had a one-on-one. On Wednesday, Rory and Ian had a one-on-one. This is a Scottish name, and this is an English name, so it's barely pronounceable. Rory and Ian On Thursday, lots of one-on-ones here between Pedro and Darek, Dejan and Pedro, and another one here. And then we had Dejan and Ian, and Rory and Pedro. Different combinations all the times. I delegated the one-on-ones. Why not? Why should I do all that work? It makes more sense to do this in a 360 kind of way. And the team loves it. So, oh, this is so valuable. Every week they talk with one or two other people from the team, just 30 minutes about personal stuff, personal development, etc. We also have 360-degree meetings. This is a funny picture that requires a bit of explanation. One of my team members, Thomas, this is Thomas, our Agile coach, he said, psychology suggests that it is easier to take criticism when you have something in your hands, like a doll or something like that. So he instructed everyone during the 360-degree meeting to bring a doll or a puppet or something that we could hold up when we were receiving criticism from our team members. It helped. It's amazing. It's really amazing. So we had a lot of fun, and we had a very honest 360-degree meeting where basically every team member had one compliment, one suggestion for improvement, and another compliment for each of the other team members. And we went through everyone. It took about 15 minutes per person, and each of them got from each other team member one compliment. Ooh, makes you feel good. One suggestion for improvement. Oh, hold up your puppets, hold up your puppets, hold up your doll and receive it and say thank you for the feedback. And then another compliment. Oh, makes you feel good. And that worked very, very well. Okay, last 2 minutes. I'm going to skip this one. This is funny. This is my partner Raoul. We live in Brussels. And this is a funny story that I can share with you. At one point he said that this was when the Netherlands was the chairman of the European Union. They rotate that every half year. And the Netherlands had the chair. So he said, we made a terrible mistake. We did something very, very stupid with the planning of the meetings, and all the other countries are mad at us right now. They can drink our blood, basically. And I have to chair the new meeting tomorrow, and there are important decisions to be made with the 27 countries, and everyone is hating us. And the chairman, what do I do? Because it's not going to be a productive day because of the stupid mistake that we made. And I said, we have this agile practice where somebody who has made a mistake admits it, and then wears something silly, like the hat with the fluffy bunny ears or something, for a whole day, right? Just admitting that you've been an idiot. Because the problem is, even if you say sorry, if it is very well meant, that only takes 3 seconds. But people are angrier for longer. So you can say sorry, but they will still be angry. It's not like, oh, okay then, for everyone else. No, they're still like, they feel like that for the rest of the day. So you have to communicate the entire day that you feel sorry. So he said, wear something ridiculous in your contact. That is for diplomats in the European Union, as ridiculous as possible. Well, I can tell you, all of them wear suits and ties, etc. So next day, at the end of the day, he came back and said, how did it go? He said, it was amazing. I had this ridiculous shirt underneath my suit, and I said, I'm going to apologize for the stupid mistake we made as the Netherlands. And then he said, he took off his suit and the shirt, and this colorful, ridiculous shirt came out and said, this is the failure shirt. I wear this failure shirt for the rest of the day, admitting that the Netherlands made a mistake. He said, they loved it. I got applause. Everyone wanted to take pictures with me. It was I have never seen, I was the hero of the day. And he said, it worked like magic, because all the anger was gone out of the room. And then we had a very productive meeting. So that was Agile